it's football and other F words.
There we go.
And
There we
a little technical difficulties. I mean,
Listen, we're learning on the fly.
Yeah.
We do what we have to make things happen around here.
And we're, of course, as you could probably already see on the picture, we're joined by Nate Washington. Nate, we greatly appreciate you joining us. Big honor of ours. And, of course, you have a book. And, look, I got it in Kindle. Oh, hold on. Let me
Man brought
show
his
everybody.
tablet to the studio.
Yeah, brought the tablet. Football was my father, so we got it right there. And we're going to ask you a few questions on that, but we're mainly going to talk Tennessee Titans. But just so you know, I know you've been kind of doing a media tour. You've been on Music City Audible. Listen to that. Just so you know, we're a totally different podcast. You feel free to cuss if you want. You can say whatever you want. This is a kind of walk around the room moment for you.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Explore the
great.
space.
I appreciate you guys having me, man. This is awesome, man. As you stated, I kind of wanted to connect with the fan base of the podcast world. And as you guys probably know, I posted a question a little bit ago on my Twitter about whose was their favorite podcast. And you guys, came up a number of times. So I wanted to make sure I get in contact with you guys and kind of listen to you guys and give you some of my words as well. So I'm grateful that you guys have having me on.
It's a number of times that we were mentioned, but not enough times, to be honest.
Not more than the Justins. The Justins got more shine than we did.
I really feel like we got a little slighted. Football and Other F Words has been around since 2017. So, we got a little slighted on this, and I kept tabs. I saw who did and didn't request us. So people made the naughty list since we're in Christmas, the naughty list here.
I like it. I understand, man.
So I'm the only unpublished author on this podcast currently. Stoney has written 2 poetry books and some movie books. So I'm going to let Stoney ask the first literary question for Football Is My Father, a book that you recently wrote and is available on Amazon and wherever you get your books.
Yeah, Nate, first of all, I appreciate your time this evening. I just want to know, what went through your head? Was there a specific thing that sparked you to write this book? Because being vulnerable is not very easy. Sharing your story is not always easy to do. You put it out there in print form for the world to see. What was it that inspired you to write this book?
Well, first of all, kudos to you too. Writing poem books is a major thing. Actually, the next project I'm working on, I've also been writing poems pretty much my whole life.
That's awesome.
That's
an F Words exclusive. F Words exclusive right there.
We just broke news.
We broke news.
Yeah, definitely. But, this project was important to me just, in all honesty, coming from a single parent home, man, there's a lot of things that come along with that, a lot of stereotypes. And in all honesty, it was a situation where, I keep hearing, the stigma and the nuance coming behind being a professional athlete and, us being rabbit holed into only being that thing, but for me, it was so much more, growing up in a single parent home and my situation, especially growing up as a boy with a single mother, there was a lot of disconnect there as growing into my manhood, you know what I mean? And a lot of those things were, helpful to be around these men that I grew up in the game. My coaches, my mentors, the guys that were around, they were always there, teaching me what was right and wrong about being a man. You know what I'm saying? It was much bigger than anything that was going on the field. It was about perseverance in life. It was about respect. It was about discipline. It was about, making sure that you were always doing the right thing. And, as I thought about it, I was going through a lot of things at the back end of my career and after retirement. And, I prayed one day and I just was like, man, God, why are you taking me through all this stuff, man? But I kind of heard a word from him saying, you don't know what young man is coming behind you that you need to inspire and try to guide in the path of understanding his situation. And everything that he's going through is for a purpose. And also, for the sake of my mother, you know what I'm saying? I think a lot of what she went through of raising me and trying to understand and be the best as she could, I'm sure she's not the only single mother out there that's trying to endure the same thing. So it was just trying to give inspiration to both the young men that I grew up in single parent homes, but also inspiring the women that are raising these young men to just continue to press forward and do the right thing the best way you know how, and everything will work out for you.
I think your last 2 chapters probably spoke the most to me when I was reading it. Comparison is a thief to joy, a thief of joy, just because Like everybody's always comparing each other to someone else. I mean, even athletes. I mean, if you just go on social media, Cam Ward's getting compared to Patrick Mahomes. Cam Ward's getting compared to Justin Fields and Josh Rosen. But also, like, know yourself, study the tape, a real look in the mirror moment in chapter 12. I mean, talk about those 2 chapters about the comparison and knowing yourself and what that means for you personally and what you hope that other people gain from it.
Well, for me personally speaking, first of all, in chapter 11, comparison is the thief of joy, both in my personal life and on the field. You know, there was a long time for me professionally that I wasn't accepting to the congrats and the kudos that I was getting from fans, the acknowledgement sometimes, because a lot of times I would compare myself to the Hines Wards, the Reggie Waynes, the top guys in the game at the time. And I knew that my career, in all honesty, my accolades didn't compare to theirs. So in a lot of times, I didn't see myself as I should have. And I kind of downed a lot of things that I was going through because of that. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it was important to understand, hey, man, no matter what you have seen, no matter what you have crossed in this path, you have a large story to tell. You have a lot of accomplishments of your own, and you've done a lot of good things. So it's important to hold my hat on that. And in saying that, on a professional level, it also affected my personal life because, not to dive into deep for people, but because I would love for them to read the book, but it carried over because I had a great wife, I had a great life, had a great supporting cast, but a lot of me was always looking at it like, this person has this, going on. So I should have that going on as well. And it kind of hindered me from taking appreciation from what I actually had. And then moving forward towards chapter 12, knowing yourself, man, I think a lot of times of the obstacles that I faced, a lot of things and the things that I had to persevere through, not only on the football field, but in my personal life. I think a lot of times it's so easy to point the finger at other people. Well, this person did this to me and this situation led me here and this person never taught me that. But it was important to finally point the thumb and finally look myself in the mirror and try to take some accountability for the things that I have been through. Because all in all, I think the world and society will kind of hinder you in trying to accomplish certain things. But I think if you look in the mirror and you address those things with yourself, I think it'll always pan out for you on the good end. So I think just going back to the basics and understanding kind of in chapter 12, where a lot of my personality, my characteristic traits came from my parents and my upbringing and those type of things was important for me to acknowledge and my hand on having, some of my success and my failures. So it was really, as you said, just a deep look in the mirror and trying to understand, like, what do I need to do as a person to make everything all right? Because I can sit here all day and tell everybody what the world has done to me. But at the end of the day, if I can't dig deep on myself, then I'm never going to get any progression.
Got some goosebumps right here.
I know, man. That was a little hair raising right there. Nate, we talk about, you talk about discipline and respect and perseverance. I think sometimes we get in these Twitter streets sometimes and we get caught up in the wins and losses. Fans say some crazy things, but I think it's hearing you talk about your story that kind of reminds me that football can be much more than a game. And I'm just curious how important it was for you sharing your story to remind people of how football can be much more than a game.
Yeah, definitely. As I stated, a lot of fans see this game, and a long time ago, I realized, a lot of people have nothing going on at home, living in lower income housing and all those type of things. And sometimes just a game on Sunday gives them a break and a way out, So seeing that team win is everything for them. But I think a lot of those fans don't understand it's much bigger than a game for us. You look at the Joe Burrow situation right now, and it's unfortunate. You're looking at kids that are playing in their 20s, some are in their early 30s, and they're playing a game of children and they're getting paid a lot of money. And as a fan, you might look at them and say, well, why are you unhappy? What is going on? But at the end of the day, that success does everything for you. It builds your confidence and you want to go out and you want to perform well for the fans, but it's a lot more to it. Tying yourself into the game is an emotional state that a lot of us go through that we carry on even after the game. I have peers to this day that have been retired for 15, 20 years and are still going through mental anguish blemish on some of the games that they may have played in that didn't work out well. And every time I see them and talk to them, they want to bring those things up. And I'm like, hey, man, we were done about 10 years ago, bro. Like, let's leave that alone. But I also have to understand for them, it's everything. You know what I'm saying? So for me, a large part of this communication with the fan base was important because I think a lot of them need to understand just as much as they, tie themselves into these teams to get away from their reality. This is our reality, and when we don't perform well, when your team isn't successful, it definitely takes a toll on your mental, and trying to get back is definitely something that is an obstacle for a lot of us that have been through those situations.
To transition to the current Tennessee Titans situation, obviously Cam Ward, highly, first overall draft pick, quarterback. He's been kind of, I don't want to say blasted by the media or in the media, but there are some people who take his "we asked" comments, his not, satisfied with just a win, just coming off this win against Cleveland. And I just want to know, like, as a veteran, because you hear those two things, and then you hear that he speaks out in the media that he kind of wants to be involved in the coaching process and everything. Like, as a veteran, how would you view that, and how would you view Cam Ward coming out and saying those things from your perspective as a rookie?
I think I'm going to speak from a fan's perspective, okay. First of all. I think from a fan's perspective, it can be a bit confusing, because, statements like "we asked" and statements like, hey, dude, we won a game, but it's not good enough, and those type of things, you don't really understand. You want wins. You want a guy that's happy about winning ball games for your organization that you're rooting for. And that's the only thing that matters. But, being a player in that locker room, I think I would understand some of the perspectives that he had in certain situations, especially at the beginning of the year, saying "we asked." Because if you reflect back on, even when draft time and, the statements that he made about Calvin really being top 5 receiver in the league, about, his ability to come in and help this organization, and then you don't get the progress or the wins that you want in the early part of the season, there's a true transparency of being honest. Hey, we asked, so I get it as a player, but I think some of those things just have to be filtered a little bit more media-wise, because everybody's not going to understand that. Now, you move forward with the situation of him wanting to be involved with the input of the new coaching hire and the process in that. And I think it's important that he is, because not only are we talking about the future of the Titans organization, but we're talking about the future of this guy's career. And this is one position. The quarterback is one position, in my opinion, that you can't hide a guy, right? He touches the ball every single play. And this guy, in a lot of ways, he's always going to be the head of the criticism. He's always going to be the head of the snake that gets chopped off whenever the media or the fans want to scrutinize or criticize the team. So therefore, it's important for that guy to be involved with having some type of relationship or communication input moving forward and trying to pick the right guy. Now, does that mean he's going to be the one selecting the guy? No. But at the same time, I think it's important that he does have some type of input and some type of relationship with the guy that will be hired, that will be really in control of his future. You get guys like Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield that are able to leave the one organization and go to another organization with opportunities that work out for them, where they're a lot more successful than they've been in their previous years. But that doesn't work for everybody. Everybody doesn't get that second chance at that quarterback position. So I think he kind of understands and grasps that. And I think sometimes with his transparency, I think his media relations could be a little bit more filtered. But I definitely, as a player, understand where he's coming from in some of those comments.
So let me ask you this, because, and I don't want to put anybody on blast if you don't want to put anybody on blast, but, he was asked about, other players were asked about the "we asked" comments, Cody Barton, Big Jeff, and they didn't, Cody Barton took more offense, Big Jeff kind of walked the line, and then about the winning, I'm not, going to sell, the win was fine. It's fine. Yeah. And then we hear the Arden Key story. Like, do you think the vets have handled his comments appropriately? Or do you think that this is just how the locker room works?
Well, I think this is how the locker room works, in all
Gotcha.
honesty. Speaking specifically on the Arden Key situation, when I first
Which
heard
we
it, I
shouldn't
kind
even
of
really know about, I guess. But
yeah, in my opinion, though, that whole statement and that whole story in itself, I think, kind of was taken out of context.
Gotcha.
When I heard it, I heard a joking Arden Keys, joking with him on the plane, like, "Hey, rookies, forget what he talking about, man. Enjoy yourself, y'all. It's hard to win in the league and this, that, and the third." But being a player in that organization, I understand. Sometimes, hey, as they say, even a trash can gets a steak every now and again. And winning a ball game is not good enough if you turn on the film and you didn't perform well. So in that regard, you have to be honest. And I think the honesty is the most important thing. You want to be happy about the wins. You want to be happy about the success, but at the same time, you want to perform your best. And if you're sliding out a win and you didn't perform your best, knowing that next week is coming, then you got to get back to the drawing board and you have to be humble in that situation. So I think that was really just him being humble and saying, you know what, we won, but it wasn't good enough. And I think that's important, to realize, as you stated, there's going to be different personalities in the locker room. As Barton and Simmons both handled the situation differently, those are just different personalities. You know what I'm saying? So I think at the end of the day, though, this is a locker room that is still young, still new. Even with Barton being a veteran guy that's coming over from Denver, I think this locker room is still new to each other. They're going to have to gel. They're going to have to understand each other's personalities and continue to form for this organization to be successful.
Even a trash can gets a steak. It's totally.
I just wrote
it down.
That's a bar.
I wrote
That's
it down
a bar.
so I can always remember that.
Yeah. Nate, one of the things that I always admired about you, and I think it's a reason that you've endeared yourself to so many Titans fans throughout all the years, is that it didn't matter how many games you guys were losing, you were always out there playing your ass off. And I'm curious what it takes from a player's perspective to really grind it out with that sort of level of dedication in a season where, there's only a few games left. They've lost a ton. Like, how do you get through that and keep playing hard to close out the season? And what do you think it says about some of these young guys that they are still out there playing as hard as they are?
Man, pride is everything when you're playing this game, right? I think in a lot of ways, in a team aspect, with it being a team game, I think you want to go out there and you want to get wins. But at the same time, you understand sometimes your personnel around you just isn't good enough to get a win, right? So in that regard, you want to go out and you want to do everything you can personally. I recall, times of, I think in Tennessee, I played with like 9 different quarterbacks. I think I had. It was a heavily shuffled roster of quarterbacks that I was constantly trying to get on the same page with, constantly trying to find timing. And as you stated, for me personally, I just remember going out there and telling myself, you know what, Nate, no matter what's going on around you, you want this fan base to understand you and you alone. If so be it, you gave everything you had. You did everything you could to help this team win. And as much, like I said, as much as it's a team game and I want to get a team win, it was a much more prideful situation in me performing individually. I didn't care how much we were down. I don't care what was going on. I recall a game in which we played the Atlanta Falcons, Jake Locker's rookie year, and the first game that he got in. And I remember, I think we were down like 23 at the time. And we came out, and Matt Hasselbeck had got hurt. I think it was either his elbow or his calf or something like that I got hurt. And I remember being down 23, and Jake came over to me and was like, "Hey, man, let's go. I want to get some things going." And I'm thinking to myself, like, God damn it, Jake, we getting our ass kicked, man. I'm just trying to make it home safe. You know what I mean? But came out that next series, and Jake threw me his first touchdown, in which I made a play on the sideline, was able to turn it up and take it into the end zone. And we came close to winning that game in the end. So it's just all about a personal pride. While it's a team game, it's a personal pride thing. I didn't never want to be another guy that was a part of that problem when it came to that fan base, because in all honesty, the fan base meant everything to me.
And we've talked a lot this season about the concept of identity and wondering what this Titans team identity is. And it seems like the last couple of games, they are kind of getting back to running the ball, being a physical offense, that sort of thing. But I'm curious, from your perspective, as a wide receiver, as an offensive player, is it important for you to know what your identity is as a unit in order to build chemistry and function as an offense?
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, when I was there, especially when we had CJ2K, I knew
Mm.
what time it was. We were a run first offense. You know, we had one of the best run offensive lines in the league, you know, with our offensive line. You know, that's the reason why CJ was able to go over 2K. So I knew that, you know, the receiving core was a second hand option for that offense. And I knew there were going to be situations that we had to be reliable, but I knew we weren't the first option. And that's important, you know, to understand the totem pole upon which this offense wants to grow and direct itself is important to understand as a player, because you have to play your role. You know, you go out there on Sunday thinking you're going to have 10 catches and 200 yards. It's not going to work in this offense. You know, you have to go out and do your job. And I think that's important to understand what your role is. But in the same sense, you come in a situation where you have no identity and have no understanding of what your role is, then you're really just out there throwing things against the wall, hoping that something sticks. And in that regard, you never want to play that game that way. You know, you want to have a philosophy, you want to have an identity, you want teams to be able to prep for you in a specific way so that when you're counteracting their prep, then you catching them off guard. But with this offense, you don't know, you know, sometimes whether you want to stop the run or Cam is going to have 30 plus throws. So it's important to have something that of an identity that you hold your hat on. So each player on that offense will know their role, know their assignment, and what their specific requirements are going to be to help this team be successful.
Were the best offensive, I guess, rooms that you were a part of, were you guys kind of dictating what you wanted to do, or were you guys more reactionary? Because it kind of felt like the Brian Callahan regime and even this Mike McCoy regime has been a little more reactionary for the majority of their time. And it seems like when you look at the more successful offenses, they're like, well, we're going to run our offense, but we have answers for the defense.
Oh yeah, definitely. You definitely want to be the one that you're setting the bar. You don't want to come out. I mean, adjusting is always,
right,
you know, something that you're going to have to do. You know, you want to be able to adjust. Don't get me wrong, but like I said, you know, even when I was in Pittsburgh, when we came out, as good as Ben Roethlisberger was in my third and fourth year, when we came out, you knew we were running the ball first. You know, it didn't matter what was going on, and a lot of our big plays came off of play action shots, and that's how we were able to counteract the run game. You know, but if you come out and you have no identity upon what you want to do, and you're constantly letting that defense dictate how you should adjust, a lot of times they'll set you up. You know, they'll stack the line on you to claim that they're stopping a run. In all honesty, they're fooling your quarterback and they're dropping in the zone coverage. So if you don't have identity upon, hey, listen, it doesn't matter what you guys are doing, this is what we do, and we're going to be successful no matter what. If you don't have that mentality, then it's going to harm you. I think being reactionary is something that is necessary, but nothing that you want to hang your hat on.
You know, I do a show with Blaine Bishop, and we got asked this question on Wednesday's show, and I thought this was such a good question because I think culture is such a general term and a broad term that it means a little bit different from person to person. So I want to ask you what we were asked. What is culture in your mind like? When you think of a team with a good locker room culture or good culture in general, what are the signs fans should be looking for, but what are you looking for as a player?
When I think of culture, I think of the previous regimes, whether it's players or coaches that have come through this or through the organization and have established successfully what they're about, right? When you look at Pittsburgh, New England, you look at, you know, Dallas in their heyday, you know, those type of things. You know, speaking from personal standpoint, man, when I first stepped in foot in the Pittsburgh Steelers facilities, it just felt like a blue collar, hardworking team, right? It just felt like this is what the history was. This is what the culture is. This is what's expected. It doesn't matter if you're a first round draft pick or an undrafted free agent rookie. Everybody is expected to come in here and be a blue collar worker that works their tail off, right? And I think sometimes those things get lost when you don't have a connection of your past. And when you look at the success that the Titans once had in their earlier days with Steve McNair and Eddie George and those type of guys, I think that was a great foundation for us, but it never carried over, right? And I will even attest that it was really due to my generation of that era, that next era that came in after Eddie and them were done. You know, you look at what we were able to do in those 6 years that I was there, and I think a lot of those things got lost. You know, unfortunately, Bud passed, and even in that happening, you know, the culture just was always shifting. You know, it was Tommy came in. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, it's one thing to play with, you know, a slew of quarterbacks. It's a whole nother thing to play with multiple owners. You know, everybody's going to have their way that they want to address this team and how they want to make it successful. So culture has to be built by your past. It has to be understood about what you want to get accomplished. I really wish they would have built a culture off of what Mike Vrabel was able to readjust and bring to the table. This team was under Mike Vrabel. This team was a blue-collar, hardworking, physical team. And for that to get lost now moving forward, I think it just kind of set them back. So those type of things are important. You know, you have to be able to build off your past. And I know the Titans are young. You know, they were built here in 99 in Nashville, but you have to be able to start somewhere. And I think while they had a great foundation with Eddie and them, we may have taken a step back with my regime, but you also had a guy that came in and was able to clean things up. And I think they really took a step back again after Vrabel left because the culture just got lost in what they were wanting to accomplish.
I love that because I feel like Mike Mularkey kind of reestablished that after Ken Wisenhunt left.
Yeah.
That Mike Vrabel carries the torch, and it's all connected to that. And people think, well, if you got to be in the past, you got to be an old school offense. That's not necessarily true, because if you look at the Kyle Shanahans, they're essentially rooted in the West Coast offense that won the San Francisco 49ers a bunch of Super Bowls. Everything's cyclical in the NFL. So, like, that really kind of resonates that maybe this team needs to get back to a blue-collar kind of environment, as you suggested.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important. You know, at the end of the day, Tennessee, Nashville is a blue collar city. I know it's Music City, but you got regular everyday people there. You know, this isn't Dallas, this isn't LA, this isn't Vegas. You know, this is Nashville. And those people are want to come in there with their cowboy boots on and their Titan blue on, and they want to root that team on. They're going to walk across that bridge with pride, and they're going to do everything they can to root that team on. But, you know, when you got a city of blue collar workers that wants to go out and support this team, and that team is not being a blue collar worker type of organization, then there's going to be mixed feelings, you know. And I think, like you said, it's going to take some foundational builds to get back to what they were doing great under the guys that they had, like Mularkey, Vrabel, and a couple other guys that they had in opportunities.
Going back to your time with the Steelers, Nate, back in the summertime, Zach and I got reamed for suggesting that we would love to have what the Pittsburgh Steelers have in terms of sustained success. Like, they're always competitive. They're always around the playoff race. You spent some time there. We've heard this front office talk about building a system for sustained success. What did you see during your time in Pittsburgh firsthand? What steps did that organization take to achieve such sustained success?
Man, you know, I'll go to the old Mike Tomlin statement because it's kind of been synonymous with the organization throughout the years. The standard is the standard, man. It doesn't matter whether you're a first-round draft pick or an undrafted guy. You know, I recall times of Hines Ward being hurt, and I might have to step in, or Santonio being hurt, and I might have to step in, and that same expectation was there. It didn't matter whether I went to Tiffin or not at that time. It mattered about me going in and doing the same job that Hines was able to do, you know. And I know fans may hear that and be like, hey, well, you're not Hines Ward. Of course I'm not, you know, but at the same time, it's important to go be impactful. And I think that's always been the thing. It doesn't matter who they plug in certain positions. That expectation of being successful in that position is always going to be there. You look at them now, you know, they're missing TJ Watt, they're missing Herbert. And there's an expectation to still get after the quarterback. It doesn't matter about their Pro Bowler, their sack leader being out. That expectation is always going to be there. And I think a lot of times that kind of gets lost with this Titans organization, right? You lose your guys of Snead and those other guys that were high paid profile guys that come in, Calvin Ridley and those type of things. And you look at the situation, but the work is still there and somebody has to step up, you know. And even specifically looking at this receiver room, Calvin Ridley goes down and you have a young Shamir Dyke stepping up and doing some huge things for this offense. And I think that is going to always be something that's going to have to be there. You know, you doesn't matter where you were drafted, doesn't matter what the expectation is from your salary. It doesn't matter if you've gotten any reps. You got to come in and you got to do your job, because at the end of the day, the standard is the standard.
So you signed with the Titans after a 13-3 season. Walk us through your decision to sign with this team. I mean, you can be honest, was it as simple as money, or was there something else appealing about the job? What was it that made you choose this team to come here?
A lot of it was money. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of it was money. But let me say
that's
this.
why people do a lot of things.
Of course. But let me say this. Free agency for me was unique because it was something that I wasn't expecting. Going back to my third year, when I was told that I would be tendered, I was like, well, what the hell is a tender? Like, I didn't even understand it. And when they broke it down to me, it was like, oh, well, you'll be a second round tender. This will be your salary. This will be the expectation if someone comes to pick you up and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, I understand. So going into free agency after my fourth year, I was kind of lost. I didn't really know what to expect. And then I'm hearing that I was the number 2 receiver on the free agency board at the time. And I'm like, okay. And free agency hits at 12 o'clock on a Thursday night. And here it is at 12:03. I'm getting calls from my agent at the time telling me I have visits set up already in line. And I'm like, wow, this is unique. I didn't know any of this would happen so fast in this way. So a lot of things just hit me like blindsided, right? So when I got to Tennessee, I didn't know what to expect. You know, I knew I was leaving Pittsburgh, but I was like, if it is Nashville, like I didn't know anything about Nashville. I didn't know about Broadway. I didn't know about Country Music City. I didn't know anything. So I'm like, man, I know I've had, success on the team, and Pittsburgh was great to me because we were so successful. So I'm like, man, I'm leaving a great city like Pittsburgh, and I'm possibly going to Nashville, and what's happening? And I remember being on my visit, and Coach Graves at the time was the receivers coach. And I remember being there during my visit after going to the doctors and getting my physical that morning. And after that, numbers started swirling with my agent and him texting me and letting me know what the possible numbers may be. I remember my Coach Graves taking me down the street to a restaurant called Sweats. And going in Sweats. And I remember we walked in and there was a guy sitting there, right? And he looked at my coach and he said, "Hey, coach, how you doing? It's good to see you today." He was having his lunch. He said, "Hey, man, did you guys get that young guy that you were bringing in and you wanted to sign?" And he looked at me and said, "He's right here." And I was like, wow. I was like, the city is already, I haven't even signed yet. The city is already asking about me and wanting to know who I am and thinking that I could do something great for this team. I left out of lunch that day and we went back to the facilities. And I remember sitting in the office with Reinhardt and Coach Fisher. And Coach Fisher literally looking at me like, "Hey, well, I'm letting you know right now, what number do you want? Because we're not letting you leave here." And that feeling of confidence that I had from a guy, it just made me feel comfortable. It made me feel like this was where I was supposed to be. It made me feel like that organization and that city was my next stop, and I couldn't wait to get there and prove those people right. So while it was money, I got a pleasant surprise when I got to Nashville and seeing the energy that was there for me, the want of me being around and the expectation of me signing with the team and the possibility of the things I could do really sparked the nerve in me and sparked me to sign that contract.
So that is fantastic perspective. I look at the situation. There's this idea out there that no free agents are going to want to come to Nashville because of what the Tennessee Titans are like right now. And 13-3 is a lot different from where the Titans are right now. So I'm curious how you view the current situation for the Titans. How would you look at it if you were a potential free agent today?
Oh, if I'm a free agent, I would love to come to the Titans. You got a young, hungry quarterback that is continuing to progress, and you can be the one that changes everything. I mean, I think people don't understand. Even when the Titans have Vrabel and Tannehill and those guys, and they made that long push in the playoffs, right? If you refer back to those things, all I kept telling everybody is, man, if they win a Super Bowl in Nashville, that city will be insane.
Yeah.
I mean, it will be incredible, right? I mean, you're talking about the celebrities, you're talking about the music stars that are tuned into the team. You're talking about, man, imagine a Lombardi being paraded down Broadway. Could you imagine that? I mean, it would be incredible. So for me as a free agent, I would want to bring that city and be a part of that city having a Lombardi and seeing the people from the high tops and the rooftops of the bars downtown celebrating your success while you're doing your parade. How incredible would that be? So I think, if I'm a free agent right now, it would be something that I would definitely be interested in. I don't think people understand how much this city has to offer and how much this fan base is behind this city and willing and ready to explode at the very minute they have success.
On the Music City Audible podcast, where that episode is out now, you talked about Art Rooney. You also talked about, how Amy Adams Strunk, you feel, gets a little bit of a bad rap. And I tend to agree. I mean, I think that she has been a little bit more present than people want to give her credit for. And then when, sometimes she's not here, sometimes she's not here. But I think for the most part, she makes decisions based on what she feels is actually best for the team, whether that's going to be unpopular or not among the fans. She's trying to bring a Lombardi. But I want to ask you a question, because you did come from such an evolved owner as Art Rooney, who you said you saw almost every day. Does ownership play a part in free agency for players? I mean, maybe back now is a little bit different than back then, but would you think that ownership plays a part in free agency?
For some guys it may. For some guys it might not. Once again, it's a personality thing. For me personally, it didn't matter who was in the building. I was always going to show up and give my all. But a lot of guys see that as that absence as being, lackadaisical. And if the ownership is going to be lackadaisical, then as a player, then why should I care, right? Unfortunately, that's the mentality of a lot of guys when you're pressed in that position. But as you stated, I think Amy has done a tremendous job of coming in and trying to do a lot of good things financially for this organization. She obviously isn't afraid to spend money in free agency. She obviously isn't afraid to spend money in the facilities and the amenities that these guys need to be successful. I think personally, from my personal standpoint, I think for me, I just would like her to be more involved with the football operation in itself. When you look at Carly from the Indianapolis Colts, she even receives a lot of backslack for what she has going on, of her presence, of being on the sideline, having headsets on, wanting to be at practices and all things. So I think, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But for me personally, I would love to see Amy be a little bit more involved in the football operation itself, understanding player personnel, understanding the philosophy of coaches that you want to hire, and those type of things is important, because obviously, while you may be able to make the decisions behind closed doors, your accountability is necessary when you're talking to a fan base. And you can't always send out the guys that you have working for you to answer questions. At some point, you have to be accountable, you have to show face, and you have to show your fan base, hey, I'm not running from this situation. I'm in the trenches with you guys. And while I may not always be perfect, I'm here to put in the work, and I think that's the most important thing, But for me personally, I see it both ways, as you said. I see a woman that's doing, the best she can. And while she may not always be present, I've definitely seen a change in the presence of this ownership, and even in comparison to when Bud was alive, because I very rarely seen Bud, in all honesty, but we knew when that Houston, Texas game was coming around that he was going to have all say so and what was going on, because he hated losing to the Texans. And whenever we did, we were going to hear about it. So I commend her, but I obviously think there's still a ton of work for her to do to show this fan base that she's all in.
Okay, well, let's switch to the wide receiver position for obvious reasons, but okay. I kind of have this beef with this phrase and we've heard it. I mean, probably even since you were around here at the Tennessee Titans, I feel like we've heard it almost every year. The Tennessee Titans need a wide receiver that could take a top off the defense. And I think people will see a guy, because I remember, I don't know if it was this last season or a couple seasons ago, everybody's like, all these people like, well, we need Mecole Hardman because he could take the top off the defense. Yeah. Well, he can't really catch the ball, but at least he can run fast, I guess. And I almost want to say, what's more important to getting open deep? Speed or route technician? Like, can't you get open through your routes? And sure, you have to have speed. You can't be like Jared Lorenzen out there trying to run a route and get open deep. But I feel like people overrate like 4.3 speed just a tad. Do you find that people overrate that when they say the Tennessee Titans have to have a wide receiver that could take the top off the defense?
I mean, when you really look at it, outside of Deshaun Jackson, the history of the NFL doesn't say deep ball catchers are 4.3, 4.2 guys. You know, it doesn't really matter. It's about, as you said, route scheme and concept sometimes. And even in this situation that we've been in this year, you know, we've had some opportunities to hit some big shots. It's just unfortunate that Cam has been able to connect on it, you know, and I haven't spoke on this specifically about that specific aspect of his game, but he's going to have to find a way to find touch on his passes. A lot of those passes are just sailing straight. You know, they're line drives. And a lot of times, even if the guy is open deep, it's sailing out of bounds and those type of things. So this offseason, he's going to have to definitely go somewhere and work on his touch, learning how to drop the ball in the bucket, as they say, giving a receiver an opportunity to run up under these passes and those type of things, because we've had some opportunities this year. But, you know, I definitely don't think that you need a 4.2, 4.3 guy to connect on deep shots. You know, I was known as a deep shot guy and a guy that can make plays down the field. And I know people don't understand this because I did it at a YMCA, but shit, man, I ran a 4.5 coming out. You know, I wasn't that fast. I was just a guy that knew how to play the deep ball. You know, I knew how to position myself to be able to make those catches when given the opportunity. And I think that's the most important thing. You know, route concepts and being able to run those routes easily is way more important than just having speed, because outside of that, I've seen some track runners come on that field and look like they got bricks for hands. So it doesn't really matter. As you said, you get a guy at 4.2 speed and he can't catch, it doesn't matter. So you want to have guys that can make plays down the field and be able to catch the ball, and that always doesn't align with a 4.2, 4.3 guy.
Nate, I want to ask you about your second season in the NFL, because the Titans have a couple of guys that are rookies in their receiving core right now, but these guys back in the spring were worrying about their 40-yard dash. They were prepping for the NFL draft. They didn't even know what team they were going to be on. Now that they have a season under their belt, they're going to have a full spring, a full summer to just prepare to be Tennessee Titans. So I'm curious about your experience from year one to year two. What kind of growth did you see in your career?
Man, so real quick story about that. As you stated, you know, as an incoming rookie, possibly being drafted or however I was going to come into the league, there was just a bunch of training, right? There was just a bunch of individual training, preparing myself to go out and do my best in my pro day, to give my best shot at making it to the NFL. So going into my second year, we were coming off of a Super Bowl. You know, we didn't end until February. We won the Super Bowl my rookie year, and we coming off of Super Bowl. So it's early March. I think it was the first couple of days of March. And I'm sitting at home in Toledo, which is a 3-hour drive from Pittsburgh. And I'm sitting at home. And for those who know Bruce Arians, he was my receivers coach at the time. And he called my phone and was like, MF, where the hell you at? I'm like, what you talking about? And he's like, why the hell is everybody in Pittsburgh right now working out and your ass is not here? And I said, oh, what you mean? I didn't know we started, I thought it was voluntary workouts, right? And he was like, no, voluntary is involuntary for your effing ass. You better get in here and do what the hell you. And I said, oh, my Lord. He called me on a Monday night. I jumped on the roll immediately and was at that Tuesday workout that next morning.
And I bet he's kind of a scary guy to get yelled at from, right? Like, I mean, because his face gets red and everything. He seems like a scary guy back in the day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and Bruce Arians has absolutely no problem cussing you out. He doesn't have a problem at all. He would MF you all day, man. So he didn't have a problem. But it was kind of funny because, like you said, I didn't realize what that next chapter of going into year two was like, right? And that was finally my opportunity to go work out with these other professionals, get some timing ability with my quarterback, understand his mentality a lot more than I would have understood my rookie year. And a lot of the gelling that came with our team started in the spring. So it was important for us to have those things. So I think a lot of times, young guys have this ability to go through the draft process, get drafted, come right in, they play immediately. But that next going into year 2 gives, as you said, gives you an ability to now settle in as a professional. It gives you an ability to come into the organization in the spring before everything starts, get some good quality work with your quarterback, have some conversations with your coaches of expectations and things you need to improve on outside of game to game, week preparation, week preparation and those type of things. But I think a lot of times it gives these guys an understanding of the professional aspect of the game. Being a rookie and coming in straight off the draft, you really don't understand until you're in midweek, and now you have injuries. You got to come in, you got to take care of injuries, then go to meetings, find time to work out during the day, go do those type of things. So this should give them an opportunity to slow things down a little bit, get into the organization, understand their things that need to progress and improve on, and work on those things individually, and give themselves an opportunity to understand the professional level of this game.
So I don't think it's a reach to say that we've seen throughout the season so far, Alek Eilemander, Chimere Dike both have NFL talent. Neither one of those guys from a talent perspective looks like they don't belong on an NFL field. But in terms of taking the next step as receivers, let's say, Nate Washington, you are the Titans wide receiver coach. What are you coaching these two guys up on to make them more reliable, consistent NFL wide receivers? What do you think they have to improve upon to get to that next level?
That's the number one thing. You stated it, consistency. I think, as you stated, they both shown signs of being great. They've both shown signs of being great assets for this organization. But it's the consistency. One week they're playing well, the next week they have 2 drops and a fumble. And I think it's important to really hone in on the fundamentals of the game. For me, for Alek, I would definitely tell him, I don't care what you feel like is going on. You keep your eye on that ball until you secure it, because a lot of his drops come from him taking his eyes off of the ball. So I would find any drill that I possibly can, off the jugs, if it's off of the thrown from a hand or whatever it is, to make sure his eyes are staying locked in. I think Teron Davenport had posted a picture earlier in the season of a unique goggle situation that the receivers coach that was using for those guys. But in all honesty, I think it's bigger than that. It's literally the fundamentals of the game. Literally keeping your eye on the ball for him, studying that point, and making sure you're looking it all the way into the tuck. And for Chimere, I think it's him he sometimes, as fast as he is, he plays too fast in his head too, right? He tends to make moves sometimes and not secure the ball. He tends to make moves sometimes and not understand, hey man, this catch must be secure first before you can make any move. So outside of his ability to bring splash plays, I think his consistency is going to tie down to him slowing himself down mentally and not moving so fast. And I think that'll help him tremendously. But at the end of the day, you hit the nail on the head, man. It's all about consistency. You don't want to go out and perform well one week and show signs of greatness, and then the next week you come out and you look like, hey man, you might be on the trading block or the chopping block. So it's about consistency and building off of those things and trying to make sure that every single week you're putting the same type of performance out there.
So I'm curious about Chimere Dike specifically because he's also this team's returner right now. How do you balance the snaps between receiver and returner with Dike? Because, you need playmakers on offense. You need playmakers in the passing game, but you might not want that wear and tear of all those snaps starting to jeopardize the asset that you do have as a returner. So how delicate is that balance?
I'm going to be honest with you, man. If I'm coach, I'm using him whenever I can. He's a young guy. Hasn't really been shown any signs of injury in his chart and his history. So you got to use a young guy while you can. A young body is always going to be greater than the older body, obviously. But in his specific situation, I don't think he's in a situation where you got to pay attention to a pitch count. You really want to use this guy whenever you can. I think he's been truly an asset, obviously, in the special teams game. I think, in all honesty, the special teams has been the most consistent thing that we've had on this organization for the whole year. You know, they've been the ones that have been giving hope towards, you know, anything positive towards this team in a lot of ways, as where it's been ebb and flow both on defense and offense. Some days you've been good, some days you've been bad. Some plays you've been good, some plays you've been bad. So I think, you know, in all honesty, if I'm a coach, I have to find a way to get this kid the ball. You know, it's obvious that he's able to do some great things as a utility tool. He's a great asset as a special teams returner, but you definitely don't want to turn him down on this offense. I think he just needs to understand, you know, as I stated, he has to slow his mind down. Special teams isn't offense. A lot of times as a returner, you're taught, you know, you get that ball and you hit that crease as fast as you can. But sometimes on offense, it's about finding a specific hole, finding a specific spot to settle in for your quarterback in order to give him an opportunity to get you the ball. And once you get that ball, then you can do your best to, you know, give that offense a chance to score or move the chain. So I think more than anything, if he understands that special teams is not offense, obviously, and you need to slow yourself down a little bit more on offense to understand what the defense is doing to you, then I would use him anywhere that I could right now, especially with him being a young guy and a young body.
You know, number one receivers come in all shapes and sizes, all kinds of skill sets and everything. What type of wide receiver do you think would benefit Cam Ward the most this next 2026 season that is kind of missing right now?
A veteran that is shown that he's not only been reliable and successful. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, man. I don't even care if he's a 1,000-yard, 15,000-yard catcher. It's more important to be reliable, to be a guy that we can rely on third down, you know, a guy that we can rely on in the low red zone, whatever it is, because this is a young receiving corps and they're going to need a veteran in the locker room to show them the ropes, to teach them how to be professionals. And unfortunately, they don't have that with Calvin missing. So in all honesty, it's going to be a situation where they need to find a guy that is a veteran, a leader in the room. But I don't even care if he has a huge production. They need a veteran that's reliable. And when I say reliable, I'm not just talking about catching the ball. I'm talking about a guy that has a low history of injuries and always showing up to play on Sunday, because that's also been an Achilles heel for them. You know, you look at this situation, even after they lost, well, not necessarily lost, but an idiotic move of trading A.J. Brown. And after him, you know, you see a situation where there's just been no consistency at all, you know, no reliability. You got guys that are coming in and they show you 2 good games, and in that next game they're hurt and they're out for the season. And while I know injuries happen, it's important to be having a guy that's out there every game. You know, as I stated before on previous podcasts and other interviews, you know, my only season that I went over my 1,000 yards, I played full 9 weeks on a high ankle sprain. Didn't practice one day, only played in games, you know, but it was important for me to go out there and be reliable, because we had already lost Kenny Brett to an ACL. And I knew, you know, if I left too, you know, that receiving room was going to be a bunch of young guys that were just, you know, trying to do their best. So I didn't care if I was getting 10 catches a game. I didn't care if I was getting 100 yards. It was important for me to be in that meeting room and be on that practice field with those guys to try to teach them whatever I knew to help them out. And if I could be out there on Sunday to give a lending hand, then I was going to do it.
Love it. Love it. Okay. We watch a lot of film for Draft Prospects, this big draft show for Tennessee Titans fans. So we have to ask why we got you on. If you were scouting wide receivers, tell us some of the things that you are looking for on tape, on film, or in person in the game that you say these are must-haves for wide receivers, or these are the things they need to excel at for their game to translate to the next level.
Well, first of all, I would be looking for a guy that understands the speed of the game. And when I say the speed of the game, I'm talking about understanding that on this level, everybody's a professional. So you're not just going to be able to run straight by guys. You're not going to just be able to go out there and out-strengthen guys. You have to understand what spacing looks like. You have to understand what being able to beat defenses looks like. And a lot of times that all relays into how guys come off the line. You know, I don't like seeing guys dancing at the line, man. I like to see guys be decisive and understand what that defense is trying to do to them so that they can get into their route and give that opportunity for a quarterback to get them a ball. And a lot of young guys, you'll see them, especially in these training videos, you'll see them dancing at the line, doing all these choppy things and all those type of things that have no bearing on them being successful in the route. A lot of times it tears up the timing with the quarterback. So that would be the first and foremost thing. You know, I want to see guys being able to explode off the line and being decisive in their route concept. After that, I would love to see a guy that's able to get in and out of his break. You know, I was raised on an old statement that says 3 shall set you free. 3 shall set you free, man. And that's a true statement. You know, a lot of times, you know, when you're running comebacks and you're running curl routes and you're running routes that you have to break off of, you want to be able to be a receiver that can plant on 3 steps and get in and out of that break. So if I'm seeing a guy that's chopping 4, 5, 6 steps, you know, that's not a guy that I'm going to be able to look at and says, hey, this guy can get in and out of his break and can be successful on the next level. And lastly, I think, you know, something that really hindered this young receiver core in the beginning of the season was understanding spacing. A lot of times you give these kids routes and it's exactly how it looks on paper. It's exactly what they try to go out there on the field and do. And it doesn't work like that. You know, a lot of times you want to understand that spacing. And if I have a comeback that has a guy that's coming under me and running a flat route, then I have to understand I have to get in and out of this route, because if I don't and I'm too slow, then that under route guy is going to close up that window for that quarterback to get me the ball. So understanding spacing is imperative for young guys, you know, coming into the league. So I think those would be the 3 things. You know, if I could summarize it, having a young guy that's decisive and explosive off the line, being able to get in and out of his breaks at the top of his routes, and also understanding spacing and route concepts when it comes to play schemes and expectations from the receiving core.
Well, you know what they call those routes where they're not decisive at the line, they're doing their dancing? They call them TikToks.
TikTok routes.
Because that happened at the Senior Bowl last year. The Senior Bowl last year, they would show all these clips of these wide receivers, and they're all dancing at the line, and everybody's like, ooh.
It's like 15 steps
and
before they get out into their
route. I mean, like, this isn't, like, you're not going to be able to sit there and do the hokey pokey before you go out for a route.
Exactly. Definitely.
Yeah. Nate, the last question I've got for you. We talked earlier about that Pittsburgh Steelers model of sustained success where they've been good for like the last 50 years or whatever. I just want to get your read on where the Titans are at in this rebuild. How far away are they, in your mind, to such a model of sustained success?
In all honesty, I think they're quite a bit of ways, because when you talk about player personnel, even in the situation they're looking at this year, they let a lot of good guys go. Brownlee now is in with the Jets. They letting their young guys go and those type of things. So when you look at it, you want to look at player personnel. And outside of Jeffrey Simmons and Cam Ward, you're looking at an ever-revolving door when it comes to player personnel. You don't know who's going to be here next year. You don't know who they're going to trade out. You don't know who's going to. And so until those things happen, where they finding guys that at least can be on this roster for 3-4 years and have some success in this organization, then they're going to be quite a bit of ways away, because nothing is going to be built on constantly interchanging your player personnel. You have to be able to find guys that you can ride with for at least 2, 3, 4 years that can give you some foundation and understanding of what your next guy is going to come in. You know, I guarantee you the next defensive tackle that comes in after Jeffrey Simmons is going to understand what his, you know, requirements are. You know, and I think a lot of Jeff understanding what his requirements are coming because he's coming in after Jarrell Casey and those type of things. So you have to find guys that are going to be in your organization for more than 3 or 4 years, because if not, you're going to have constantly a revolving door of guys. And when you have that, you have no sustainability. You don't have no culture. You have no understanding of what you're truly trying to build. And I think that's really been hindering them here this past couple of years. You know, while they're trying to build draft capital and stock of those things. The draft capital doesn't matter if you're bringing in a guy that you're going to get rid of in 2 years. So it doesn't matter. They have to make sure that they're drafting or bringing in free agents that are going to be a part of this organization sustainably for the next 3 to 4 years at least, so they can understand what culture they're building and what expectations they're building of each position.
We would be remiss if we let you go off this show without talking about one of my. I was there at this game. One of my favorite games, one of my favorite sports moments of all time for a Tennessee Titans fan. Listen, I was there for the CJ2K game up in Seattle. I was there live for that. I wasn't necessarily, I saw the Music City Miracle, but I wasn't there for the Music City Miracle. But I was in the stadium for September 23rd, 2012. And here's why this Detroit Lions-Tennessee Titans game has a little bit extra little space in my heart, is that the girl I was dating at the time, her whole family was in town. They're huge Detroit Lions fans, battered Detroit Lions fans at that time. And her dad ended up taking off his Detroit Lions jersey and revealing a Titans jersey on underneath. But the stories of people just leaving the stadium in droves and being caught in traffic, seeing the fireworks go up behind them and regretting being mad at their wives and their girlfriends. That 44-41 overtime win is one of my favorite Titans memories. And you're an integral part of that. You and Jake Locker, we did a podcast a couple summers ago, me and Stoney did, where we just talk about Jake Locker and Lindell White and, those, all those kinds of Titans players that kind of people forget about. Of course, nobody's forgotten about you, but this game is one of those games to me that's like a top 5 Titans game.
Yeah.
And I just want to know, what is going on the sidelines? What's going on? What's the conversations like between the offense and the defense, you and the coaches, you and Jake Locker? What is going on that you guys just stayed in this game, and while everybody else gave up on you, you guys knew you guys were going to pull this off?
Oh, man, you got me fired up even with the introduction to the question, man. So for me personally, I had a vendetta against Detroit. Detroit drove me up. I was in Toledo. They drove me up from Toledo to Detroit to do my visit with them when I hit free agency. They were actually the very first team I went to. Not only were they the very first team I went to in free agency, but my incoming rookie year, they told my agent, long story short, they tell my agent they want to sign me to a guaranteed contract. They want to allocate me to NFL Europe, but I'm going to have a guaranteed roster spot, right? So in a matter of me signing a contract and sending it back to them, they signed somebody else. So I had absolutely nowhere to go. And then I hit free agency, and I had a contract on the table with them then, and it went through every personnel that was supposed to go through and got to the owner, and the owner denied my contract. So that's how I ended up in Nashville. Mm-hmm. So anytime I played Detroit, I had a vendetta against them. I wanted to show them, you guys missed out. So I remember being on that sideline, and Jake was always a fiery guy. He was always fired up. It didn't matter, like I said, whether we were down 23 or up 23. Jake was always going to be, hey, let's go. Let's get it together. So I remember, it would be in a tight game. We were going back and forth, and those plays were happening. Jared Cook made a big play. The stadium was erupting. Everything was going well. And then I was able to make my play. And then I remember just sitting on the sideline and everybody being ecstatic about it. But I remember personally thinking to myself, hey, man, none of this shit matters if we don't win this game. So then we go out there. They get the onside kick. They get the onside kick, and then they score again, and they tie it up. And I'm like, oh, my God, what are we doing? And then we come back, and they throw the Hail Mary, and they catch the Hail Mary. And I'm like, golly, no, this cannot be happening. So I remember coming back to the sideline and just thinking to myself, man, as much success as we had this game, none of this is going to matter if we don't pull this win off. And our defense went out, and they got the stop, man. And everything else was history from there. But I remember that game specifically, Calvin Johnson walking up to me after the game as we were going to meet the teams, and he asked me, how the hell did you catch that damn ball? And I just remember laughing with him like, hey, man, I could not lose to y'all. And the funny thing about that specific story is the receiver coach for Detroit Lions at the time, Sean Jefferson, ended up actually coming and being our receivers coach in Tennessee the next year. So we had some good laughs about it, and we had some, memories. But that game, probably outside of the Super Bowls that I played in and experienced, and that journey with those Steelers teams, and that game is probably my most fondest game in a Titans jersey. It was a game where it literally took everybody on that roster to pull that win off. Offense, defense, every single individual had to chip in and do whatever they could. So that's definitely one of the games that I will always remember, always love talking about, and definitely one that I hang my hat on to say, hey, man, we weren't as bad as people thought we were, man. We did everything we can to win.
So what I'm hearing is Detroit fucked up. Like,
oh yeah, Detroit really fucked up.
If you cross Nate Washington, he's gonna make you pay for it
every time, man. I've learned to grow the set aside the hatred now that I've been retired almost 10 years. But man, for a long period of time, I had a huge despise for that organization.
So like the guy that you caught it on, I forgot the guy's name, and I'm looking at the picture that we used.
Jacob Lacey.
Okay.
Yeah.
When's the last time you talked to Jacob Lacey? Do you maybe text him every September around that game and send him just that picture? Because I would.
I wish I had his number. I might do something like that. But no, I definitely haven't seen him since then. It's always gratifying when you go across an old opponent. When I run across an old opponent in public or in an event space that I see and might have made a play on or might made a play on me. Me and Antonio Cromartie have a good laugh all the time about the Jets game and when I was able to catch the ball over him and knock the ref down. So we have some good banter about that. But definitely, man, this is. The NFL is a brotherhood. No matter whether it was good or bad, it's always good to reminisce over the things that you've been able to accomplish in that regard.
I'm just going to say that was the last season that he played football. You may have ended his career.
You ended the man's career. Oh, my God.
I'm looking at it right now. 2012 it wasn't the last time he played a game, but 2012 was the last time he played in a game.
Yeah, I'll take it, man. I'll tell you what, man, that catch in itself is one that I will never forget. Obviously, fans will never forget. And to this day, I'm still in awe of, the kudos that I get from the fan base about that catch. And I appreciate all the love that they show me from it.
The stories are the best, though, because, like, there's so many husbands mad at their wives or, mad at their in-laws or, whatever, because they were forced to leave the game early because they thought the game was over.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
and
definitely thought the game was over.
Oh, man. It's a beautiful game. One of my favorite memories. And listen, Football Was My Father. That's the book for Nate Washington. I'm holding it up here on the old iPad. Give the people a little bit more information on Football Was My Father before we let you go.
Oh, it's a book about my life, man. It's a book about growing up in a single-parent home and how the game of football, not only the game of football, but the mentors and the men that were involved in teaching me the game, the coaches and all of those things helped shape and mold me into the man that I am today. I do everything that I can to understand that we aren't built to be perfect, but mistakes are made and it's important to rectify those mistakes the best way you can moving forward. So this book is all about redemption. This book is all about perseverance. This book is all about understanding the position that I was in and a lot of other guys were in, and hopefully not only giving hope to those young kids that are chasing that journey of trying to make it to professional sports, but also influencing those coaches, parents, and everybody else that has anything to do with these kids growing up and understanding that, this is not just a game that you're teaching them, but a lot of these kids are going to be the men that you are grooming them to be through this game. So it's important not only for the young men, but also the older ones as well to understand the importance of what this game does for us. It's not just a game, it's about the understanding of becoming a man and perseverance and duty as you should, with your family and those in your environment. So it was very important for me, and I'm grateful for you guys having me on today and the opportunity not only to talk about the book, but talk some football, so I had a great time with you guys.
Well, we greatly appreciate it. Football Was My Father. We've enjoyed the time here. Just make sure that for anybody that needs to have this book in their life, and I would encourage that everybody needs this book in their life, it is available on Amazon, Kindle, paperback, and hardback.
And Nate, I know you've got a book signing coming up in Toledo soon. But if
Yes.
you get that book signing down here in Nashville, you let us know, man. We'll come.
I would
up.
definitely be let you know. I spoken a little bit earlier, but me and Keith Bullock are in the midst of working on something at his coffee shop and his wine bar. So definitely be on the look on that, and I'll make sure I let everybody know. But Tennessee's fan base, the Titans fan base, you guys have been amazing. You've always supported me. You know, there's obviously always going to be a couple trolls, but the overwhelming love and support that I've received from this fan base is amazing. And I'm always going to make sure I come to Nashville. So I definitely will have you guys look out for that situation and the opportunity for me to come have a book signing there.
For sure. I will say this. I know we are live, by the way. I just don't know if you knew that or not. I don't think we ever told you, but we're live. So we have a chat that's going.
An hour in. Oh, by the way.
Yeah. I just want you to know that we just sold a book.
How about that?
Okay. I love it.
So I don't think the Music City Audible guys, the Justins, they didn't sell you a book, but we sold you a book right here. It's from Titanomics 615. Says he just bought the hardcover book, and it will be here before Christmas, and he's super excited.
Take that, Justin.
Awesome, man. Thank you for everybody for their support, man. I love you guys, Titan fan base, and I can't wait to see you for the book signing. I'll make sure I let you know when that day's coming.
We'll promote it. We'll have to have you on the show again for sure, because this was a fun trip down memory lane, but also kind of talking past, present, future of the Tennessee Titans. And so we'll have to have you on in the offseason once maybe the head coach is settled and all that.
Yeah, sounds great. I'll definitely be here for you guys. Thank you.
All right, Nate Washington, Nate the Great, as some people in the chat called him, a legend of Tennessee Titans. We greatly appreciate it. For Stoney Keeley, I'm Zach Lyons. For Nate Washington, this is Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.